Yo, what's good? I'm just here to do another recap. I'm basically just recapping the last 2 days and the trades that I took over the last 2 days. What was good, what was bad. Because I realized I didn't actually do anything for the last 2 days, and I want to keep these up and keep improving. Okay, so I took a trade on Thursday, I believe. Yeah, Thursday. Probably the trade of the week for me. So what did we have? So basically we were trending higher, really towards these this weekly high, relative equal highs. On the daily, we had this daily fair value gap. Daily fair value gap. And what else did we have? I need to come to open maybe. This is... Oh no, this is... Wrong day. Let's get to open, sorry. Okay. So open. So we're in this, basically this daily fair value gap. What do we have here? We have a bunch of low resistance liquidity all along here, leading up to, I believe we had a 4 hour here. Yes, leading up to this 4 hour fair value gap. Again, with the higher time frame being so bullish to these highs as well. So, we've got low resistance here, leading to higher time frame low resistance, creating higher resistance with this. And then I believe at the same time, I'm not going to go over ES because with TradingView is pretty annoying to kind of go between them in bar replay. But anyway, so we're in this daily fair value gap. We've got this low resistance all here leading up to this 4 hour fair value gap, which is really beautiful. So the daily is our key level. We have CE of the daily to take. I know people were talking about hourly fair value gaps at your stop loss, but I think when you're within a daily like this, that should be pretty fine because this is already the higher time frame key level. You're mainly just looking for a good structure. And what we had leading into open was these 15-minute fair value gaps. So I'll just mark them out just so we know we had them. So these end up getting mitigated at open. So that kind of is a little bit of a pity for our draw on liquidity. But again, what is this 15-minute defending? All of this low resistance up here, running up to an imbalance. So this 4 hour imbalance has all this low resistance liquidity running up to it, which makes it a really good DOL, one of the best basically. So it's really, really a strong one. So realistically, on the whole higher time frame coming out of this daily targeting that 4 hour, you'd expect this 15-minute to fail. So what do we get at open? We manipulate higher into this 15-minute, but again, that's coming right into a daily, so you're not really going to take that. So it's still kind of nearly adding to the low resistance. Still have even CE of it to tap and open imbalances above. So then we get a 2 minute, but I know a lot of people pre-fired the 1 minute, which I've been kind of playing around with the idea of doing this, as you can see with my trade on Friday. But I think it needs to be this A+. Like, this is really like the best trade. You can just see like how we're pumping through these gaps. Like, there's no rejection wick or anything while we're inversing these. The liquidity above is amazing. We've got accumulation, manipulation, and we're about to distribute. We're below 930. We're manipulating into CE of the daily gap. Like, you're not going to get a better setup than this. So in these circumstances, I think pre-firing is probably okay to do. But the 2 minute closes up here. I think I got in somewhere along the way here, and I aimed for a 1-to-1, I believe. Well, I didn't aim, I trailed aggressively, so we got that, but I think I probably could have held it because I had it, was holding to these highs. Probably should have just kept going with that. But again, you're not going to get much better a trade than that. There's little you really need to recap, maybe more about the break even, because I know a lot of people went break even at this intermediate term high, which makes sense. But again, is this intermediate term high going to just randomly reverse into this extremely high resistance low coming out of the daily fair value gap with all this open liquidity up here? That's probably not. Again, I went break even up like when this candle bleeded through the 15 minute, because I didn't really think it was going to return. Initially, once we hit the 15 minute and kind of displays through, I reduced my risk, and then once we started moving much higher, I kind of felt like we should just flush. But again, this candle did scare me. So that was that trade. Let's move on to Friday, which is actually a bit more of a complicated day because this one required a lot of thought process and thinking. Okay, this is 30 minute. Okay. So that was 9:30. Okay. What did we have here? So, right, so we are still within this daily gap. So again, very put simply, we're higher time frame bullish. We're in this daily gap, which is being respected. So, and we still have all this liquidity above here on the higher time frame. So there's always that to keep in mind. But we were after coming into these 4 hour fair value gaps basically here. And we're rejecting heavily out of it coming up to open. And what do we get off of this at open? Well, just before open, sorry, just going to bring it back at bar. So just going to bring this over here just to keep everything within the visual. So we come into this 4 hour and we get an opposing PD array with this 15 minute fair value gap. So coming into open, this became my condition because we're really within a high resistance versus high resistance scenario, because this low here is created out of the daily fair value gap. So, and it's obviously moving higher towards the clearer highs on the higher time frame. But what are we coming into as well? We're coming into a 4 hour fair value gap and then creating opposing PD arrays. So this high here is also high resistance. So I've been trying to look at how to play high resistance versus high resistance scenarios. And you really just need to work on your conditions. And I really think it's just about paying attention to what's going on. So when we come into open, we just need to pay attention to what we have. So we are displacing now off of the 4 hour, creating opposing PD arrays and disrespecting bullish PD arrays. Not exactly at this moment, but again, the fact that we're creating an opposing bearish fair value gap is kind of indicative that we're probably going to inverse this 15 minute. What do we have below here on this day? Well, we have an NFP Newswick, which is also a really good DOL. And what is this this move at open that was slightly looks like a Judas? Actually, structure wise looks really good as a Judas, but what is this coming off of? Absolutely nothing. So this is just more generated liquidity coming up to this data low. So what we do get is we come into the 15 minute fair value gap, which is conditioned. So if we completely disrespect this 15 minute fair value gap, then you could probably expect this high to be taken along with the other highs. But again, if we start respecting it, then we're probably going to expect at least this data low down to these London lows and probably end up coming back into the daily gap and looking for something else. But you kind of play within the kind of the PD arrays and try and see which higher low is most likely to be taken in respect to current price. So the trade I ended up taking was a loss, which was the 2 minute did I pre-fire? I think I might have pre-fired. There was a 3 minute, I think. So yes, we had a 3 minute, but I think I pre-fired on the 2 minute or 1 minute just because of how heavily we were displacing. As I said, I was open to trying that, and then this ends up just going to stop loss. So let's have a little review of the trade. So we'll go to the 3 minute because that's technically the highest time frame. Not technically, it is the highest time frame inversion that we'd be looking at. So what is good about this trade? Again, I think the idea of coming off this 15 minute and coming to the data low, overall narrative is really good. But the model is accumulation, manipulation, distribution. Where's the accumulation really? Like if we're being picky, where's the accumulation? Okay, now we've got an accumulation. Now we get a stop hunt. So again, it's I would say this one probably lost. It's not a bad trade idea wise. I think the narrative is pretty A+, but the structure and lower time frame isn't. I don't know if I would take this again. I think I probably wouldn't now that I'm thinking about it, just because it's really just the first retracement. So it's kind of see, this is where you kind of I'm starting to learn my just my own discretion and why you wouldn't take this. But again, we're kind of taking this first retracement inversion. It's just, is it like really going to just play out like without, maybe accumulating, stop hunting, and then we get an inversion which ends up actually playing out. So again, I think really the only bad thing I can think about this is just the structure really, because what ends up happening is we do end up chopping around, generating more liquidity up towards that data low. And I know someone said it, maybe it was Tiz Trade said it, that data low needs more generated liquidity to go there, probably because again we're exploding higher, so there's probably a lot of people wanting this to be defended, this low to be defended, so it probably needs some more generated, I don't really know, something like that, some sort of logic with that, with liquidity. But yeah, so we got these generated lows now, and what we end up getting is this 1 minute. I pre-fired this as well because I was just, I said it was a bad trade in my post, but it's not a bad trade. I think it was bad for me to take a second trade on the day. So it was more just breaking my rules. Pre-fired it. The rejection wick is terrible, but I know a lot of people took this. So structure-wise, this is amazing. The low resistance, the idea is perfect. Same what we had on the higher time frame. Just the only issue with this is this rejection wick. So is this rejection wick just adding to the liquidity again? To me, it actually just looks like it is. So I think it's actually, for me, this is not something I should be taking until I have a little bit more of an understanding of all this. Maybe when we get some sort of proper displacement again, maybe, I don't know, if we get an SMT there or something. But maybe when we get like a CISD, maybe, that would probably, yeah, maybe once we start closing below this, because that's kind of a good rule of thumb as well, that if we're, if it looks like we're just generating liquidity here, I think it was Tiz maybe said it, to just look for the CISD. And I think, even around here you get a CISD, but, down here you get the one for the original move. Maybe somewhere down here might have been a better trade. But I got taken out of this simply due to my daily loss limit being hit, which is unfortunate. Made me feel like I was trading bad today, which I was, but idea-wise I wasn't. It was just really the structure on the first trade, and then just risk management issues, which is bad trading. But I'm talking more about from the technicals, and this ends up flushing and playing out. So there was definitely some opportunities. Yeah, so that was my week. Ended up being break even, obviously, because I over risked today. But again, we're on eval, so we don't need to take it too seriously. But it's still good to note, and just learn from these mistakes. But I feel like what I'm getting better at is navigating our conditions. You know, even the high resistance versus high resistance, then even the high resistance versus low resistance we had on the previous trade, which ended up being an absolute banger. So, and then I feel like even the fact that I could see this idea playing out, I feel like I'm pretty happy with, because you could have been like, oh, it's all-time highs, we need to not fade the trend, but we are having this data low, and this is probably the least protected lows of the high resistance versus high resistance scenario. So I'm happy with my ability to see that. So yeah, that's the recap. Hope you enjoyed.